Mayor live. That's right, live. No cue cards, no advance notice, no questions and answers in advance. In other words, we're a legitimate show. Unlike I don't know if I can say that word. I was going to say S show, SHI show in the White House. Don't know if I can say that. Well, if I don't know, discretion is the better part of valor because he's going to bury himself. And there's no need to really pile on because I thought yesterday was do you know what a coup de grace is? The coup de grace is when somebody is virtually executed, dead, gone, and then usually the commanding officer or the person who hates him the most comes in, puts a bullet in his head, and that's like the end. I think Biden did that to himself yesterday. Now it's going to be hard to note because the corrupt media will not cover it, won't explain it to you. It's extraordinary, but how can you be surprised by anything after what's happened to us in the last 5 years? But just reflect for a moment with me. Did you ever believe, I don't know how old you are, but just go back sort of however far back you can go. Did you ever believe that we would have a president in the White House who really was suffering from a serious case of dementia, Alzheimer's, loss of a significant portion of his brain so that he doesn't remember where he's gone, where he's going, who he is, who's alive, who's dead, and consistently gets those things confused, and has a disease that is described as progressive. This is progressive in the same way the Democrat Party is progressive. It leads to utter destruction. In other words, progressive means the disease gets worse. Same thing with the Democrats, right? They're progressive and the disease gets worse. We become more socialist. We become more authoritarian. We become more fascist. And then we become part of Soros's one world. So it's a really interesting thing that word progressive is used the same way. But if you go to the DSM-5, which is the Bible for psychiatrists and psychologists, Biden has every single symptom of advanced dementia that you could possibly have. And then he's got a couple sort of in the ultra category. So yesterday, and there's really no need for me to talk about it. Let me just play it for you. And you, I don't know, make up your own mind. I mean, make up your own. Is there anything to make up? This is Biden yesterday with a group of children who are, I remember first time I saw a president. I shook hands with John Kennedy on a big line. He was going through Times Square. Remember the first time I really got to talk to a vice president. It was Richard Nixon after he was vice president. And I remember the first time I met a president in office, and it was Gerald Ford. They were all extremely impressive occasions, even though Democrat, Republican, it almost didn't matter at that point in my life. They were Democrat or Republican. The president of the United States. Can you imagine the memory of these kids as they get older as to this absolutely pathetic performance? But let's listen to it and let's hope it's loud enough. Let's see. I think we'll put it up as loud as we can get it.
The last country I traveled, I'm thinking what's the last one I was in. I've been to 89, met with 89 heads of state so far. So I'm trying to think where was the last place I was. It's hard to keep track.
Wait a second. You know the last place he was. If you don't, you're an ill-informed citizen who probably shouldn't vote because you're so stupid. I mean, it was all over the media for 5 or 6 days. It led to tremendous criticism that he was there while the country was falling apart. And it was pretty much decided that he was sent there to hide so he wouldn't have to answer questions, so he could continue his 300 or 400 days without a real press conference. He also, did he announce for president from there? Well, he really didn't announce for president. He put out a 3-minute video saying, I'm running. So, I mean, I think we all know where he was, but let's see what happens here.
I mean, yeah, you're right, Ireland. That's where it was.
I think that's a 4-year-old who tells him where he was. Can you imagine that 4-year-old that she reflects back on that later in her life? We actually had a president who couldn't remember where he was last week when he was there for 5 days. It was a big international controversy in a way that he was there, and he can't remember it. Now, I've been castigated since August, September of 2020. I think I was the first, as I was the first to do many things that took courage to do. I was the first to do a podcast with 2 doctors that said he was demented. No, they didn't say he was cognitively impaired. Nobody even knows what that means, cognitively impaired. Joe Biden's been cognitively impaired from the day he was born. He was left back in the 3rd grade. He cheated his way through high school and college, cheated his way through law school. In law school, I knew his law school classmate. Most dangerous thing in the world was sitting next to Joe Biden because he was leaning all over your paper, and you might get thrown out. Like he was almost thrown out until he did his plagiarized paper. Every single thing I'm telling you now is documented truth. This could be one of the dumbest people that has ever served in the United States Congress. He clearly has to be the dumbest person that ever served in the White House. Can you imagine when a guy as profoundly dumb as he is actually then gets a mental illness? Wow. Let's try it one more time. Let's see if we just go back here and let's just listen to this, because after this, how can any member of his cabinet say they're a loyal American? I mean, this man has sitting right near him a little button that could ignite a war that could end a good deal of civilization. He's got to make monumental decisions that can lead to the death of people. He has actually killed people because of his incompetence, his dishonesty, and his crookedness. Simple. Would Ukraine have taken place had Trump remained president? There's not a person in the world that thinks it would. I think, let me interview Putin. I could probably get him to tell you it wouldn't have taken place. So how many people there are dead as a result of this man's lack of intelligence, mental illness, lack of a conscience, corruption, and just being generally evil? I'm going to show you he's generally evil, but let's get to that in a moment. You got to hear this one more time, because if this doesn't lead a member of his cabinet to move under the 25th Amendment to remove him from the presidency, then every single one of the members of the cabinet are traitors and care more about their own position than the good of the country that we love.
The last country I've traveled, I'm thinking what's the last one I was in. I've been to 89, met with 89 heads of state so far. So I'm trying to think, where was the last place I was? It's hard to keep track.
Of course it's hard to keep track when you have dementia. You know, they keep talking about giving him a cognitive test. You know what you're listening to? You're listening to a cognitive test. That's what a cognitive test is about, you know. Who's the president? What's your address? Where's the last country you went to? Right? Is your father alive? Oh, yeah, I think wasn't he at the White House with me? Did you actually see Roosevelt on television? Oh, yeah. Mr. President, how could that be? There was no television when Roosevelt was alive. Oh, but I saw him on television. I used to deal with people like this when I was 24 and 25 years old, an assistant U.S. attorney that come into the U.S. attorney's office with complaints, and I would always send them to Bellevue. If I met him and I talked to him, and I didn't know he was the president, I'd send him to Bellevue.
I mean, yeah, you're right, Ireland. Actually, it was.
The 3 or 4-year-old kid tells him where he was a week ago because he can't remember. This is what happens in a nursing home for people who have advanced dementia. People have to tell them where they were a week ago. Huh? And they got to tell them, hey, Joe, we got to get you back to reality here. You did not see Roosevelt on television reading the funny papers for a couple of reasons. First of all, it wasn't Roosevelt who read the funny papers. It was a man named LaGuardia. Number two, neither one was on television. And Roosevelt couldn't have been because he died 2 years before there was television. Tell me what else I have to do to prove that he falls well within the definition of being incapable of carrying out the duties of President of the United States, which is the language of the 25th Amendment of the Constitution. It's put there to guard us against an incompetent human being having the power of life and death over us. Well, an incompetent human being has the power of life and death over us, and it has led to death. Many, many deaths. We mentioned the people in Ukraine who'd be alive today had he not become president. Had they not stolen the 2020 election, he would be alive. They would be alive today. So would the 13 people who were killed in Afghanistan. The Americans killed there. Isn't that so, right? That wouldn't have happened either. What do you think the percentage is of people who've died from fentanyl from the day he's walked into office? Gone up three times. Trump's last 2 years were the only 2 years that fentanyl ever went down, much like the situation on the Mexican border with the stay in Mexico policy that got some control over the Mexican border, which he immediately reversed out of a meanness of spirit that said he didn't care about the American people. He's just going to reverse all the things that Trump did, even the things that were good for this country. And since most of what Trump did was good for this country, and most of what he's done is evil for this country, he's created one of the worst eras in American history. He's taken us from energy independence to energy dependent. He's taken us from a North Korea that hadn't set off a missile in 4 years to one that's done about 20 so far. He's taken us from a China that was quiescent and not making threats on Taiwan, hadn't for about 4 or 5 years, that now does it almost every single day. He took us from a Russia that remained at least controlled and not willing to go into Ukraine and take any more territory, to a Russia that has decimated the Ukraine. Ukraine may have fought back valiantly, but it still means there are well over 100,000 Ukrainians dead. Not to mention soldiers dead who probably never wanted to fight in this war in the first place, which is one of the reasons they're fighting it so poorly, because they have no morale. This man has been a disaster for the world. And all you have to do is listen to that tape and you can figure out why. A man who doesn't have a brain can't possibly be running this country. Now, it gets worse because this man doesn't have a soul either. Among the other things that he did in that interview with the children, I won't play the whole thing or belabor it, is he was asked how many grandchildren he had, and he deliberately excluded the illegitimate child of his son, Hunter, whose name is Navy. You tell me a grandfather that refuses to recognize their grandchild, and I will tell you, you are looking at an evil man.
Sick.
Because we know the reason he's not doing it, because of his pathological narcissism, right? Nothing's going to affect Joe. It's the reason he took his addictive-prone son, a teenager, made him into a bag man, and put him in a life where he dealt with 4 or 5 of the worst murderers in the world. You think I'm exaggerating? Well, Mr. Zlochevsky, who built a $41 billion business when he came out of government to reap the rewards that he had sown with his corrupt tenure in the Ukrainian government favoring Putin, all of a sudden his 50-50 partner, about 5 weeks later, ran into a tree, died, and he took over 100% of the company. Just one of the numerous acts of violence that he's suspected of, and is a high-ranking member of Ukrainian organized crime. He took $3.5 million from a woman who probably double-crossed her husband, is considered to be the wealthiest woman in Russia and probably the most corrupt. What do you think the odds are that she's had people killed? I don't know. They're probably pretty good. And then we go to China, where under the admission of Hunter, we know he dealt with the spy chief of China. Is it conceivable that our president was actually a partner with the spy chief of Red China? It's not only conceivable, he was, and it's on paper. And we see the money that flowed between them. There was a chart today where the congressional committees found another 4 million. So the 31.5 million is now 35.5 million. I'm going to tell you, I happen to know it gets closer to 100 million, but let them take their time. I've had the hard drive longer than they have. They've been covering it up forever, even the Republicans. Just afraid of it. Gosh, if we had a government of brave people, this would all be over pretty quickly. Man, do we have cowards? Wow. I don't know what they're afraid of, I guess.
So, Mayor, should we take our first commercial break and bring on our first guest of the evening? Do you want to go through some more stories? How do you want to cut this up tonight?
Let's do the first commercial, because this is something that could be very, very valuable to people who are extremely, I would say, concerned about their finances. So we'll take a short break. Faith and family, freedom and finance are 4 things that we would do anything to protect. I trust the team at Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors, with providing the advice and sound strategies to take advantage of the inflationary pressures, the high interest rates, and the international challenges we face today. The Kirk Elliott team, with over 29 years of experience, shares our values and believes in people over profit. They can help you protect your finances from the big government policies that are out of our control. So what's in our control? The decision to act or not to act is within our control. I encourage you to act. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors today. Start working with a team that will help you protect your retirement assets with gold and silver, while sharing your desire to protect your faith, family, and freedom. Call them today, 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900, and tell them Rudy sent you. Or simply fill out a request for a free consultation at kirkelliottphd.com/Rudy. Rudy Giuliani back with you with America's Mayor Live. We have Carolyn Wren with us. Carolyn is I'd say, first of all, she's a political expert. She's a masterful political organizer as well as fundraiser. Has probably some of the most current knowledge of what's going on, good and bad, within the GOP, and maybe good and bad in general within politics. So I'm just going to let her describe to us. Plus, she wants to talk a little about that. There's an expression, ambiance grise, the person in the background, usually the evil person in the background. And it seems to me that George Soros fits that he's like the ambiance grise multiplied by 1,000 in the background of American politics. He biggest funder of the Democratic Party, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, the crooked DAs, crooked Eastern European organizations. I mean, who knows what? So tell us about how the Democrats are organized. Used to be Republicans outraised Democrats, right? Yeah. I mean, you go 30 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, we were considered the big party, the party of money. They had to rely on unions. It's turned around completely, right?
Well, we still get these press releases that say RNC outraises DNC this month. NRSC outraises. The reason that is because the Democrats don't fund party committees. I like to tell people that we're fighting two different wars. What's not even war? The Democrats are at war with us. Republicans think it's a badminton match. And so
I love that comparison.
Yeah, it's
I love that.
But you have to go. I was the national finance director for President Trump in 2020. My job was to look everyone in the eye and ask them for money, and it would say we could take up to $817,600. And at every meeting we had, at every pitch,
for a
it was
PAC.
Trump victory. So the first part went to the Trump campaign. Everything above it went to the RNC. It went the next 35,000 went to the RNC general fund. The next 107,600 went to the RNC legal fund. The next 176,000 went to the RNC convention fund. The next 107,600 went to the RNC building fund, and then it spilled over to the state funds. This was the waterfall that could actually interchange. That ultimately was by the end of the campaign, 817,000 person, 1.6 per couple. And at these conferences, I was the one who sat across these donors and said, "We are going to be ready. We're going to have a legal fund thanks to your money." On the morning of the election, that election, I'm running the election night for all the donors. We wake up the next morning, and I'm told by the RT to go into the lobby of the hotel to find $10 million to help go fund to get people out to these states. And I look at Ron, I said, "Are you nuts? If I go into that lobby to ask for $10 million of people, we just spent 4 years asking them for million. We raised $200 million into legal fund. Where the hell is that money?"
Right.
Because I tell you what, they're going to eat me alive and they're going to eat you alive. And she was like, "Oh no, well, just go do it because we can probably get some good money out of these people." And I said, "Are you nuts?" And so the next day I'm in a meeting and I'm organizing to get planes together because we had to get people to Nevada, Pennsylvania, all these states. And they tell me, "Caroline, if you get a plane to get," I don't remember Rudy or it was Corey, like some say, "You're going to be fired." And I was like, "Great. Consider this my 2 weeks notice, considering it's now 2 days after the election. What are you firing me from what?" And so Don Jr. is like, "Caroline, get a team to Nevada." So I get some donors. I get Matt Schlapp, Rick Grinnell, myself. We get on the plane and
By the way,
tells me
they did a great job.
we did. So that, but on the way
unfortunately, it was a Democrat legislature, and we had no chance. But Nevada is one of the states that we had a very good chance of proving was
we did
stolen.
So I'm on the plane on the way there, though, and I get a call that they're like, "We will not pay for any hotel rooms." I'm like, "Okay." I call Sheldon Adelson. I'm like, "Sheldon, this is again, we have millions in this legal fund. You're on the other side of this. We get there, we have no support or help." I feel like it was like by design. They left us all to hang and die out there. We're all scrapping together teams, and I was like, "Where are the lawyers?" I started calling every attorney general in the country. I'm calling Ken Paxton and say, "Come help us." But there was nothing.
Carolyn, they were hiding under the desk.
But where was the money? And so then I went on this,
She thinks I'm kidding. They were actually hiding under
They
the
were
desk.
hiding. You were out there by yourself.
I walked into the campaign office. I couldn't find any of the lawyers that supposedly
they absolutely were. I was there. I was in that campaign office.
Where did the money go into this legal fund that I spent? So since then, I've been on this odyssey to figure out there's got to be a better way to do this, right? Because this is not working and the Democrats are doing something differently. And it all stems back to a single meeting. There was a meeting that happened in 2004 and the Democrats had just lost the House, Senate, and presidency. And so George Soros called a meeting in DC and they invited Soros invites the top 30 donors in the Progressive Party and they invite the top 5 political consultants. And Soros looks at them and says, "You have just collectively wasted hundreds of millions of our dollars. We are done writing. We're not writing you another penny until you come back to us with a plan that involves investing in people, ideas, and institutions that live beyond one election cycle." They all broke away and met 3 months later. And from that single meeting, you got two things. You got Democracy Alliance and Arabella Advisors. We are now about 16 years out from that meeting taking place. And those two entities are moving billions of dollars a year, weaponizing against against our culture, against businesses against us, against winning elections, everything. And they're moving these money through 501c3s and 501c4s. And Republicans are still sitting in this world of super PACs and campaign committees. I go and ask you, I said, "Can you tell me who the DNC chair is?" No one can. The DNC is an irrelevant entity. They do not do any of their weaponization. Mark Elias works through C3s. And they went to these big donors and said, "Start a family foundation. You will get the tax break, put $50 million into it, put your deadbeat son on a $4 million a year salary there, but then let us run it." And we are getting crushed. We are getting destroyed through these public-private partnerships.
Question, how do they centralize this, right? How do they, when you say let us run it, how is that?
Arabella Advisors is a philanthropic consulting company. What that means is it's a parent corp. And under it, they have 4 entities. There's 3 501c3s and 1 C4. the C3s. So I am, let's say, I'm going to use Paul Singer as an example. It's easy. I'm Paul Singer, and I decide someone comes and pitches this to me. I'm going to put $50 million of my money into a foundation that they start for me, and then I get the tax break on the way in. By the way, I can put a couple people on salary. Then they pool that money together, so they know, looking at a spreadsheet, that they have it. Then they have a project that they need pot of. Say every town USA they need to fund to fight some gun war. They pull out of the Singer, the 501c3. But the 501c3s on the left are the Ford Foundation, the Knight Foundation, the Open Society Foundation, the Silicon Valley Foundation.
Do they ever get audited?
Never, of course not. And if they do get audited, they're 501c3s anyway. They're moving so much foreign money through this too. There was this big, I called Ken Vogel, the New York Times. He was calling me about some stupid story. Like, for the love of God, have you looked into Weiss funding of the Democratic Party? Weiss is a Swiss billionaire who is currently the largest donor to the Democratic Party. He is not a U.S. citizen. And so the New York Times, they spent 3 months, they wrote the story. It's 6 paragraphs in is, we could not confirm that Mr. Weiss is a U.S. citizen. After all, like, it wasn't even in the headline.
We couldn't confirm that he's not a U.S. citizen?
We were able to finally confirm that he is not a U.S. citizen. It wasn't even in the headline. It was like buried.
And
6
did he
pages down.
contribute money to the campaign?
$1 billion. They
So
give it to a 501c3.
Wasn't that what the entire phony investigation of Trump was about? That he got money from Russia, which was a foreign country?
We all get investigated endlessly. I've been subpoenaed so many times. The only person who's been subpoenaed more than me is you. And one of my favorite subpoenas was I got subpoenaed over Trump's inauguration because this donor, like, kind of a funny name, that was a really nice.
Why would anybody care about his inauguration?
He gave $1 million, and so they started investigating him because he gave to Trump, and I had to go through and get subpoenaed for 2 years, and they ended up charging him. He's currently in jail for a straw donation. But guess what? It was for funneling foreign money to Obama's inauguration. Not even Trump's, but the New York Times never wrote a follow-up story. I got 1 million hit pieces on me. It cost me $100,000 in legal fees. They went after Trump, investigated this whole man's life because he was tied to Trump. Turns out it was actually Obama that he was funneling money to. And you never hear about it again. This is the world that we're living in, and it is by design.
So they actually put him in jail by mistake.
No, well, yeah, exactly.
They really went after him, right?
Right? Like,
wow. That's how we have to do it. We got to get these Obama people put in jail by mistake. Make them think they're Republicans.
Right? No, that's genius, Mayor.
You just gave me a new idea.
Well, the comments
what
are.
we need to do, Rudy, and what you need to help with is the only way to stop this madness that is the Republican Party right now. That is it. We are controlled by a cartel of consultants that make money off the ad buys. The Democrats don't run ads; they invest in the infrastructure of campaigns. We chase votes; they chase ballots. There's a difference, and the difference has to do with money. And until the donors in the Republican Party say, like, what was your ROI in giving to the Republicans in 2020, 2022, 2018? I mean, my God, you'd never run your company this way. Right. So until you stop funding this or have a meeting like Soros did and say, hey, Ken Griffin and Dan Loeb and Paul Singer.
Now, put aside the bad part of Soros. The good part of Soros is he centralizes and organizes efficient fundraising.
Oh yeah, but because of that meeting, they all pool their funds together. They know exactly. It's the same way you can watch. They're on message all day. They're so coordinated.
Oh, they are. I mean, like they are also when I was dealing with the impeachment. Every day there'd be a new charge, and 50,000 newspapers had, quid pro quo, quid pro quo, quid pro quo.
Love that word.
Big blockbuster. Don Jr. to be indicted. Big blockbuster.
Debunked. Debunked.
But guys, the reason that we live in this world of super PACs, party committees, and campaign committees, which cannot coordinate with one another. The Democrats found the loophole. Democracy Alliance is a membership organization. You join it either as a membership group or a candidate or a individual donor, and you commit, say, I'll spend $300,000 at your direction, and you pay a $20,000 fee to be a member, like joining some sort of club. The clubs in downtown New York, you can stay open later or smoke in some of them because you're a member club. Because when you join that club, they can advise you on giving to a C3, C4, super PAC, or candidate because it's a membership benefit. It's a way around. That is how all of these entities coordinate together. That is why the campaign in Pennsylvania knows exactly what Planned Parenthood is registering, knows exactly whatever they can communicate through this web of their C3s and networks under the guise of a membership committee.
So now we have 2024. Are we any better?
No, absolutely not. What is there? There's no. I mean, what? There's
No?
absolutely no plan. Nobody.
So
when-
this money that the money that President Trump is raising,
Right.
because of the bounce he's getting right now, where is that going?
It just goes into fun, and I hate to say this as someone who's Trump, but it funds super PACs, and no one is looking. I'm very fearful. We're about to, but I mean, DeSantis is going to raise 300 million, let's say it, and Trump will raise some money. The bigger donors are more hesitant, but he doesn't. He's going to crush DeSantis. It doesn't even matter. He could spend $0 and he wins. But who is preparing when we all wake up in August of 2024 and have to win a general election?
Oh.
There's no money going into the infrastructure of focus on registering voters and getting ballots into ballot boxes. And Planned Parenthood is not an abortion clinic. It is a massive voter registration drive. That's what these things are. They go and collect data. That all of these groups, the unions, that it is all coordinated on their side, and we are a disaster with zero plan to fix it. 70% of the country is with us. We are not losing elections because we have bad ideas. We're not losing elections because we have bad candidates. I'm sick of hearing that. You want to talk about bad candidates? How about Joe Biden or Katie Hobbs or
Fetterman?
So stop.
Fetterman.
After the midterms, all the Republican establishment, you have Mitch McConnell and Ron McDaniel blaming bad candidates, and I'm sitting here thinking, are you guys on crack at this point? What am I missing here?
Does Rona like to lose? Is there a certain kind of thing that
I think that we reward failure in the Republican Party.
So there was that
one.
There was that one comment by her chief lawyer, who I got fired, and then he was hired back, that we raise more money when we lose than when we win.
We do, and the consultants fail up. And so for your situation, I will tell you the joke of the RNC legal department is that you go there and you stay there for 2 years, and then you're promised a job at Jones Day. And in return, Jones Day is always promised to have money come to them through the RNC. So the Republicans are relying on companies and organizations that hate us. So I started to go pull. If you go look at Mark Elias's law firm, was 100 lawyers that just are on offense against us all day. Jones Day is the law firm of Amazon, Google, Apple, the same people we're trying to bring down.
They're the lawyers who go and testify against Trump in the grand jury.
Yes. Yeah. So we paid Jones Day, $36 million to represent us. $36 million to drop us. I go and pull the donation history of the Jones Day employees. Did you know that 98% of Jones Day employees donated to Hillary Clinton in 2016? 95% donated to Joe Biden in 2020. There was 7 patriotic executive assistants that donated to Donald Trump that year. And we are paying them $36 million of money that people donated to elect Donald Trump to represent us in our legal funds. And we ask why we're losing elections. It's until we deal with that, the mechanics of our elections and the disaster that is our party, then I really don't know what we're all doing here anymore, Rudy.
Wow.
Sorry if I had to drop.
It's just
the
wealth of knowledge here. The wealth of knowledge here.
It's very helpful news, because I think one of the things that we have to build, we have to raise the money for it, is we have to build an enormously competent election integrity staff, not just election integrity bullshit, but election integrity staff that focuses in on exactly the right places and has exactly the right competency to stop them. And you can do it.
Right.
I mean, it can be done. For example, if you want to stop the Zuckerberg boxers, you just hire or get volunteers, but they're going to need professional supervision. Let them sit there all night with cameras, and also have a bunch of big guys, so nobody's going to come and bother them.
I am done trying to beat their system.
I got a bunch of
I think we emulate what they're doing. I think we have to emulate it. So to me, with the Zuckerberg money, can you imagine if someone handed us $500 million in March of 2020? I know we would have put it into super PAC and run TV ads. That is not the Zuckerberg money. It was genius. They put it into a 501c3 and infused it only into the D+10 districts they knew that they needed to win, which is why they were not able to win the House, but win the presidency, is because they were playing a game of driving up the vote totals. In Detroit,
if you gave me that kind of money, I would take about a third of it and put it into policing policing the 1 month of elections.
But why not? Why don't we need to go take our money and infuse the money into the R+10 districts in these states? Why are we even showing up? Let us drive up the vote totals and go change the rules, use the exact Elias lawsuits and say, you know what, fine, let's vote for 3 months
You've got
in rural Georgia.
You got to
And
do that,
everyone,
but you also
you've got the whole time and automatically register every single person who's ever been to a church service in their life. I mean, just play the game they're playing. We like, I am ready to play the game they're playing, because until we get our people in office, like,
to play the game they're playing, you have to have a election integrity effort that begins when the election begins, which is what, in October or
Right.
in September. And therefore you have to watch very, very carefully through surveillance everything they're doing, because that's going to tell you what they're going to do after the election,
Right.
when they're behind and they have to catch up, because one builds into the other. We didn't do that first of all, we didn't do anything
Right.
in 2000. Even if it had been a much simpler election,
Right.
we weren't ready for it.
Right.
His campaign staff gave up 4 weeks before the election. They basically caved in. When I went over to the campaign office, most of them had already packed their bags, had their jobs, and were afraid to come out and see me. At one time or another, all the people he put there, I had fired.
Yeah.
At some point, I had fired them because they were a bunch of lousy incompetents.
Yeah.
One of them I fired. One of them I fired from the guy running the campaign. I fired from my campaign when he was a kid because he was a jackass. And then he ran Christie into Bridgegate, and he's running the camp. His qualification on his resume to run Trump's campaign was he caused Bridgegate for Christie.
Bill Stepien's lost every race he's ever been involved in. So I don't, again.
Well, he was the one that was hiding under his desk.
Yeah, I know. I was there too. And like, again,
That guy's
Bill
running
Stepien's the guy who said, Caroline, if you get on that plane in Nevada, you're fired. And I said, oh, okay. Great. See you
Yeah,
later.
and
That's
if you-
amazing, by the way.
I mean, yeah. So like
2 days after the
but again, these
campaign?
people don't go away. Then all
And
of a
if you
sudden,
try to go
Stepien was
over
running
the
half the candidates in 2022 that we were relying on the Trump endorsed Stepien was running. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, are we?
He didn't try to intimidate you by telling you if you go over the George Washington Bridge, you'll fall in the river.
Oh, but it wouldn't have played. I would have pushed him over the river first. But like,
Wow.
he was smarter than to go.
No, but then you had that other idiot who was supposedly a lawyer. He's not a lawyer. I always forget his name because he's such a big liar. What's his name?
Justin Clark.
Justin Clark doesn't know the first thing about it, about being a lawyer or about being any. Complete incompetent, lazy, incompetent.
Right.
When I walked in there, I said, "Where are the complaints that I was told were all prepared?" They looked at me like, "What's a complaint?"
I called the head, where like 2 days after, of the Republican National Lawyers Association. He said, "You're the first person who's called me," and we're all sitting here desperately, right, like in the fight of our lives, and they hadn't.
I called Clark a liar in front of the president, and in the book that he wrote or whatever he did, he said that he called me a liar. He actually wouldn't have the courage to call me a liar.
He said, no, they hide behind their insane consulting firms, and this racket
he
will go on for
hired-
forever until people.
But that's another problem for President Trump. He sometimes makes terrible hiring decisions.
He does, but also it's incumbent upon us to support. This man stepped away from his entire life, his career, his business, everything to run for office. And our job as political operatives, we supposedly do this for a living, is to help these people get elected and help Donald Trump. And so my God, I mean, he steps into the political arena, and we're supposed to be here to
But a
help
guy,
him, and we're obstructing.
I'm going to tell you a practical problem. He's still got Clark around.
No, I think I've never seen him around.
Oh, he's around.
I've not-
He's working for a while, and he's approving expenditures.
Well, I just go around. I tell donors, you know what? Don't run another penny until you can ask some basic questions of like, what's your plan on election integrity? What is your plan to register voters? The donors are the ones who have to stop this madness. You have to cut.
So
the money off.
who will organize this? Who is there to organize? I mean, this has to be.
I'm looking at two very capable, almost two of the faces of this effort.
But most importantly, he has to be willing to do it. It's an election in the long run is about the candidate. I mean, when
the movement.
No. The candidate makes the movement. The candidate decides. I mean, ultimately,
So we
who
need
hires or fires Justin Clark? Only one person, Donald J. Trump. So you keep him, you got a problem. So, I mean, this is going to have to straighten out if it's going to be a close election. If it's not a close election, fine. But it looks like it's going to be a close election against a complete idiot but a complete idiot who still looks like he might be able to get half the vote.
Based
it
off what
doesn't matter.
Caroline's
It's
telling
by
us, they're-
design. Like
yeah.
they can run. We can.
Or he
have
can
Bernie's
steal-
all red.
Organizational advantage that
or
you're
he can
Katie
steal it.
Hobbs could not put a sentence together. Fetterman was in a literal hospital bed. Like I don't. And we have Ronna McDaniel out there calling Carrie Lake a bad candidate why we lost the midterms. And I like it's
it's
just,
insane.
Did she say that?
Yeah. Oh my God. All day she went on Fox an entire day saying that.
That reminds
people
me
like
of
Carrie Lake.
that reminds me of The Godfather. When Hagen, the lawyer, says, I wasn't a good consigliere, Godfather, and he said, no, you're a good consigliere. Santino wasn't a good Don.
Epic. Well, the comment section is just fired up this evening.
Oh, well,
Caroline, lots of pro. oh yeah, this
Go,
is being live
Caroline!
streamed. Lots of positive comments on Caroline. Not only is she beautiful, but she is sharp.
Whoa!
And here's
anybody want a data call? Call it. No,
you got to go through the mayor
we
first.
got any calls here?
We'll get to calls. We got to get our system in here. We're going to do Kirk Elliott. We're going to give his commercial another look. We weren't able to get him on the phone this week. He's been tied up.
Oh, I had some questions for him. Well, Kirk Elliott is not only the head of this company that can help you hedge against this terrible inflation that's going on. He's also quite an economist. So I was hoping to ask him some questions even beyond silver and gold. But let's put the commercial on. Faith and family, freedom and finance are 4 things that we would do anything to protect. I trust the team at Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors, with providing the advice and sound strategies to take advantage of the inflationary pressures, the high interest rates, and the international challenges we face. Faith and family, freedom and finance are 4 things that we would do anything to protect. I trust the team at Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors, with providing the advice and sound strategies to take advantage of the inflationary pressures, the high interest rates, and the international challenges we face today. The Kirk Elliott team, with over 29 years of experience, shares our values and believes in people over profit. They can help you protect your finances from the big government policies that are out of our control. So what's in our control? The decision to act or not to act is within our control. I encourage you to act. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors today. Start working with a team that will help you protect your retirement assets with gold and silver while sharing your desire to protect your faith, family, and freedom. Call them today, 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900, and tell them Rudy sent you. Or simply fill out a request for a free consultation at kirkelliottphd.com/Rudy. A bloody genius. And probably he and his best friend, Rush Limbaugh, are probably the reason
gotta get this center this morning. All right, we're on.
So I'm gonna see what you think of this. Okay, I want to see what you, Megan, think of this. I think everyone knows Megan, right? You've been on the show so often, you're like a regular. But I have a. This is from. Now I'm going to ask you why you think this is. This is Lisa Kennedy about Biden.
Doesn't challenge her. The one thing that I had hoped after the Trump administration was that every president would be challenged the way the press challenged President Trump. That is not the case. They are kept in line. They know if they don't write their questions down, they're not going to be called upon. And, it is a form of control that the White House communications staff is using to make sure they coddle this president. I don't want our president to be coddled. I want him to be challenged.
Why does that happen? Why does the press put up with it? I mean, it's absurd. Now what's come out is there's this whole, they give him the questions in advance. They write out the answers in advance. They have them on little cue cards. They have to make it now even bigger because he can't see them. I mean, pretty soon they're going to set up a system like Fetterman where somebody answers for him and it comes out his mouth.
Right. And it was public knowledge that he was getting the questions beforehand. And also just the way that the questions that they asked President Trump, I mean, it'll be an 8-part question. And just the tone of it is just so negative.
You remember Megyn Kelly's
yes.
first
like
question of the debate?
Yeah. That he was a womanizer or something like that.
But there must have been 14 women in that. In that, you call this one, you call this one, that one. What didn't he say? It was just that O'Donnell woman that he.
I can't remember.
He gave a very funny question.
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
The only way is that, and you
the first debate.
And you bear animus for all these women.
You call them fat pigs,
and you call them fat
call
pigs,
them
and you call them all, and you hate them. Only Rosie O'Donnell.
And the crowd went nuts.
And the crowd went nuts because they all hate her too.
I mean, it was an honest answer.
Well, it's also not punching down. I mean, come on. Rosie O'Donnell's been in the entertainment, right? They all tried to say afterwards, oh, how dare Trump say that? I mean, she's in entertainment. Rosie O'Donnell can take it.
Rosie O'Donnell's a pig. She's a pig. Her mouth, she got a pig mouth.
She's a nasty woman. She's a nasty. I mean,
nasty. She makes Trump look like an easygoing guy.
She's not very nice. I'm not going to get into it. I have a run-in with Rosie, but we'll save that for another night.
Gosh, if you didn't have a run-in with Rosie, you're not worth anything. So what do you think of this? Have you been following the 75-year-old rape case that's being prosecuted where I honestly, I've prosecuted rape cases and know about a lot. I just never remember Bergdorf Goodman's dressing room as a place for numerous rapes.
It sounds to me just like the Kavanaugh case, kind of like the same thing where the person didn't even remember all the details.
Right.
But the way the media is, it's all controlled. Who runs the media is who controls the way people think or perceptions in general.
Yeah. And she didn't scream, and she was laughing.
And why?
But she said that
laughter. Many years, if you were an actual rape victim, why would you wait this many years? It seems very suspect.
Maybe because she was writing a book, and the publisher said we got to get something in this book because nobody's going to buy this damn thing.
It's a disservice to people that are real victims.
Look, I've been through the book thing, and I wrote a book that sold 2 million copies, I might add. And they weren't going to go near me to suggest this, although I got a little bit of it. They told me there's not enough in here. So what do you mean there's not enough in here?
They want more salacious
This
material.
is a great book. It's a great book. It's substantive. Yeah, but they don't sell. Can't you put a couple little stories in here?
Mm-hmm.
Like there wouldn't have been any. If I put a couple of phony stories in there about some sex something, they would have sold it based on that.
And
I said to them, something, assholes, this is going to sell based on the substance of the book. And I sold 2 million copies. And I didn't sell out to those creeps. But they make you put that stuff in there. And somebody should testify to that. I wish Tacopina's a good enough lawyer to do that. Wasn't happy with his cross-examination, but I'm never happy with a lawyer's cross-examination because none of them are as good as I am. And it's true. But none of them get people to break down on the witness stand and confess.
Congressman Podell.
Yeah. But the
1974.
the reality is, you know, for example, I'll give you an example, and I hope Tacopina does this. Here's a suggestion, Joe. She said that she laughed because that's a useful strategy to ward off a rapist. So I would have asked her to please tell me where she got that idea. Like, is there a textbook that tells you if you're getting raped, here's a really good thing to do: start laughing. She's out of her mind. What do you mean laughing is a useful strategy to ward off a rapist? Does she have any idea of what the psychology of rape is all about? I do. I prosecuted them and convicted them. They're not going to be warded off by laughter. What a bunch of garbage that is.
And we've talked about this before, you know, like during the pandemic, a lot of, if you were to call 911, they were not responding to rapes. I mean, how horrible is that?
But this was way back in, I don't even know when it was. My goodness. When I'm not even know when this rape took place. I mean, it's like 30 years ago or something.
I mean, I understand that somebody's trying to sell a book, but to bring it up now, I mean, it's just.
She never reported it.
You never reported it.
She never reported it then. There's some vague reference she made to somebody about 8 years later. Well, she literally never reported it until she was about to write a book.
And
I mean,
if
how ridiculous can it be? I mean, how absolutely ridiculous can it be? And he's going to rape her in Bergdorf Goodman. I mean, I know Trump. I know Trump for 35 years. Whatever else you think of Trump, he's not raping some woman in Bergdorf Goodman. That's ridiculous.
It's the same playbook as the Kavanaugh case.
Yeah.
That woman. I mean, it's the same exact playbook.
Yeah. I mean, and the idea, I think, was maybe she'd get some money. But in this particular case, it's so absurd. The only worry I have is it is in front of a Manhattan jury. Manhattan is 90% Democrat. It's probably about 60% wacky anti-MAGA.
The same Manhattan, you know, the DAs that don't prosecute regular crimes.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine that.
The juries are better than the DAs. The juries are better than the DAs. I mean, he could. The odds are against him with the jury, but it's not as bad as DC. And the claim is so weird that I'm hopeful that he'll get an acquittal. I mean, you're going to have to still prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. It's one-on-one. It's got the oddest. I think a good judge would have thrown the case out as not provable beyond a reasonable doubt.
And the media sensationalizes it. They do a good job of doing that. When they really want to put a story out there, they'll just play it over and over.
Essentially, here's what it is. She says it happened. He says it didn't happen. And then all of the other things she's added to it seem to make it less likely that it happened. And you don't win a criminal case if it's even. If it's one-on-one, you against me, just because you're a woman, you don't win.
Right.
You win if you've proved your case
beyond
a reasonable doubt. And there's no way she's proven that case beyond a reasonable doubt. And the extraneous facts all point to, gee, this sounds like bull. We'll see what happens.
I agree.
So where do things stand now? You've been in Philadelphia and you've been in Palm Beach recently.
Yeah.
And how do you feel?
Missing that weather right now.
But how do you feel about the campaign at this stage? Mr. DeSantis seems to be disappearing.
Wasn't he in China last? Not China. Where was he last week?
He was like
Joe Biden right now.
Japan,
well, you weren't there though.
South Korea, Israel.
Korea.
You can't make it up. Every day I
is
see
he
him in a
doing over
different
there?
country. I feel like it's a joke.
Right.
Like, what do you mean? You know, I thought, okay, he goes to Japan, maybe I'll go home. Then
Maybe
he's in
that
South
same-
Korea.
Maybe that same little girl could ask him. We'll ask him a more complex question because he clearly is a lot more
And
intelligent.
you know
than
how I
Biden.
feel.
Like,
You know how I feel.
Name
about
all the
Candace.
countries you were in. Maybe he'll miss one.
Mayor, have you had a chance to read into that Disney lawsuit at all? Are you prepared to talk about that, or do you want to finish?
No, I
Yes.
have read the Disney lawsuit.
What do you think in there?
Well, I think it.
Idealism aside, right? Like, you know,
Idealism aside, they may have abuse of the power of a governor. I mean, I don't know that he can overturn all those laws. You know, when you think about it, we got to get ourselves beyond. You know, we like. I mean, I still like him, And I still certainly prefer the way he governs to the way, but this is a little bit like what the Democrats did with the pandemic. I mean, he sort of, so we don't like Disney and we don't like what
Jumped
Disney
on the
was doing.
bandwagon, right?
But on the other hand, he's not a dictator, you know, and Disney may be miserable and horrible and terrible, but they have rights. And if we're ever going to straighten this country out, we're going to have to be able to treat the people we don't like and the people we disagree with, and even the people who we think are horribly terrible, awful. We got to treat them fairly.
Absolutely.
Because that's what's
something the Democratic Party doesn't do.
That's what's wrong right now. What's wrong right now is, for some reason, and I think it's wrong, but they hate us. And they actually think we're going to hurt the country. Even with that, we're entitled to rights. You know, all those terrorists that we gave rights to wanted to hurt the country, but we give them rights. Because if you take rights away without due process, all of a sudden you're going to make a mistake and you're going to prosecute an innocent man like they're doing with Trump right now.
Right.
Or like when they, here's a perfect example that's been resolved. Like they came into this apartment 2.5 years ago at dawn with a search warrant saying there was probable cause that I committed a crime and took out all my electronics except two.
We know what two they were.
Two they didn't want with the Hunter Biden hard drives. And 2 years later, they wrote a letter to the grand jury saying there's no evidence that he committed any crime. So I'm trying to figure out what happened to the probable cause. Did it go away?
What about the 51 agents?
The 51 agents that accused me and Trump and Biden does it at the press at the debate. He says that I was a Russian agent. I wasn't a Russian agent. It's been proven I'm not a Russian agent. Mr. Demented hasn't apologized for that.
I think you should definitely be suing them for defamation.
I think I definitely should be suing the president for defamation. He clearly defamed me, and even though there's a statute of limitations, I didn't know that he knew it was a lie until about 5 weeks ago, when it all came out that this was orchestrated with Blinky Blinken.
Unbelievable.
But there's a loser, Blinky Blinken. They send him up. They send him up. Where did they send him on that first thing he did with it was some cold place like Canada or something. They sent Blinky Blinken up there with some other useless, Jake Sullivan, the other crook.
Put him on.
And the Chinese kicked their ass. It was unbelievable. I mean, they're no match for the Chinese. They're two little sissy boys.
No.
Okay. All right, Mayor, we're going to take our first call. I'll be with you later, Megan, in a second. Let's take our first call. We have Allison on the line.
Allison, how are you?
Hello?
Oh, isn't that wonderful? The first headphone worked for the first time ever. Hey, Allison, how are you?
Not this one.
Hi. I still can't get headphones to work.
I know. I just got one to work. This is you're my lucky charm. So what's going on, kid?
I guess so. Well, let's see. About 10 days ago on your 3 p.m. show, you had Dr. Ryan with you, and you told a little anecdote about boxing with your father, which I really, really enjoyed hearing about because you and I both know a certain person whose father you used to box with.
I know.
And,
so what do you want to know? You want to know how many times he beat me? All the time.
All the time?
Well, he never beat me. He never beat me like he hurt me. He always showed me how he was a lot more skilled than I was, so I could learn.
He wanted to be a professional boxer.
My father,
World War II.
he may have actually boxed a couple of times professionally. His actual problem was he couldn't see. He had he had as a very young child he developed an infection that cost him a good deal of his eyesight. So as a young boy in Harlem, he grew up with horn-rimmed glasses, which meant that the only way he wasn't going to be bullied was he had to fight his way through Harlem. His father's brother was a boxing manager and brought him into his ring that he had. And he started boxing when he was about 4 or 5. And he was really terrific because he was a left-handed boxer. And he fought in the equivalent of the Golden Gloves. And he tried a couple of professional fights, but not being able to see. It was a bit of a challenge. So he actually sparred quite a bit with some great boxers who I got to meet.
Yeah, well, I always enjoy your childhood stories, especially the time you told me you first served at a funeral mass.
Oh, I was scared out of my mind. Yeah, right. I know.
But,
I was frightened. I was completely frightened. I was completely frightened out of my mind. I decided to volunteer to serve mass
get out of
because I could
class.
get out of class, 2 hours of class,
Yeah.
and I end up there and there's this big casket and all the priests are wearing black and the people are crying like crazy. And I'm looking and I'm keep saying to myself, I hope they don't open that casket. Oh my gosh, I'll faint. And then the next time they wanted a funeral mass, there was the big choice. Did I want to go get frightened by the funeral mass or sit in class? And I went and got frightened. The funeral mass was still better than sitting in class. And I got used to it. That's how I got, that's how I got used to it.
Okay, so I have another question for you, which I know the answer to, but I think
How about a tough one? You got to ask me a tough one, or they'll think I'm like I'm like Biden. I called you up. I gave you the questions. You gave me the answers. You know.
Well, you already know the answer to this, and so do I. But I think it's such an interesting.
I'll give a
story.
Biden. I'll do a
it.
Biden imitation when I answer again.
No, don't.
Okay.
This is too important.
All right.
Okay. Your pocket watch that you wore when you got that award a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Could you tell us the history
Sure.
of that?
Why you want me to give away all my secrets? The pocket watch is my granddad's, and it must be 100. I got it fixed about 2 years ago, and the guy told me how old it is, and I wrote it down. I think about 130 years old, 120 years old, and he got it in Italy. He got it in Italy, and it still works, and it's a gold watch. And the reason I have it is I was named for my grandfather. He was Rodolfo Giuliani, and on the gold watch is RG, and it is my most valuable possession, absolutely, without any doubt.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, my most valuable possession is the cross my father gave my mother, a ruby cross, for the first year that they were dating.
Well, these are important things. These are important things. Now, if they ask Biden what's your most important possession, he would say it was.
Possession is probably Haagen-Dazs.
It was
vanilla?
when the little children. It was the memory of the little children touching my hair.
What?
In the pool.
How is he not labeled a pedophile?
First of all,
what is he, the president of NAMBLA? I mean,
he could not possibly realize he's a pedophile because he couldn't spell it.
And we want to thank Allison.
Allison, we're getting into deep trouble here, but I would defend Biden on the grounds that he couldn't spell pedophile. Now, that's not much of a defense, but it's a lot better than his defense to all the other stuff in which he merely says it's debunked. It's debunked. It's debunked.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you, Allison, of course, being
failed third grade.
Okay, Allison, stop causing trouble.
Allison, of course, a very good friend of the show.
Next question. Go ahead. Ted?
So let's take our next call. Hello, you're on with Mayor Giuliani. Please let us know who you are and where you're calling from.
My name is Steve. I'm calling from East Tennessee.
Steve in Eastern Tennessee.
All right, sir. Steve. What do you got for us?
Well, I want to know if there's anything that we can do about getting George Soros out of America. Yeah. I want to get him gone. I want to get him gone.
I want to get him gone too. Trust me.
And his affiliates. I mean,
you want to get him gone?
Go.
You want to get George Soros gone? I don't know about that. I don't think we can get him gone. I think all we can do is combat his evil pranks and the things that he does, like electing DAs that get people killed and supporting Black Lives Matter that supports the killing of police officers, or Antifa that has also resulted in the death of so many people, and probably a great deal of infiltration on January 6th, a lot more than than anyone realizes or allows us to describe, or maybe the young children he gave away when he was a young boy. I mean, there's an awful lot of evil in that man's life, and also the protection that he gets. You see, a few years ago, if I said this, they would claim that I was anti-Semitic. Until I said, if you'd like to, I can prove to you I'm a better Jew than he is. And they never wanted me to prove why I'm a better Jew than he is. But someday they will challenge me, and I will tell you why I'm a better Jew than he is.
Well, Mayor, what a busy news week, of course. A lot of great guests. We had Carrie Lake. We had Steve Bannon, of course, Caroline Wren, and the great Megan Heaton, among others. So many friends this week.
We have any more guests?
The phone lines are open, but we have more guests here.
I know we do.
We have some other friends here, but they are hoping to be audience only this evening.
Audience only?
They're going
I
to
just wanna
ease.
add one more
She
thing.
wants to ease her way into
Okay, all right, okay.
America's Mayor Live.
You afraid I'm going to ask very tough questions?
Can I just add one more thing?
Of course.
Since everything that's going on with Tucker Carlson this week,
Oh, isn't that awful?
it's awful. And I just want to say that Tucker was maybe the only mainstream media personality that actually reported the facts of my ex's murder the correct way.
Of course, that's right. I remember
Yeah.
you told us that the first time.
Yeah,
we
and
met.
that's how I found out who George Soros was. So for 5 years, that's how I got down this rabbit hole, was that whole scenario, how that the whole case played out, the way that they were horrible to his mother. His mother was on Tucker Carlson 2 different times, actually being able to tell the story.
No, I remember.
and the facts
was
being
on
played
pretty-
out the right way.
Am I mistaken? Or was she on pretty recently?
I don't think so.
Or maybe you showed it to me.
I showed it to you. I showed it to you. Yeah. But just the regular other channels besides that, they would never add the truth, like he was a truth teller, in that situation. Otherwise, the way that they tried to label him was a racist, and it's a Soros funded DA in Philadelphia. As we know, Krasner's one of the first that we had in the United States. I would say Philadelphia got the first one.
Is like the prototype.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. I think he is the first. The one in St. Louis
Mhm.
was pretty early,
Mhm.
and the one who screwed up the Smollett case.
How about
Kim
that case?
Fox, right?
Ugh.
But the real thing that they did that nobody really points out. They do point out the fact that they let people go for murder, which is pretty, and that a lot of the cities they're in have
They'll
set
act like the
records
crime
for
is not
murder.
as bad as it is. I mean, our
Yeah.
DA actually goes on TV and acts like there's not really that much of a problem. There is.
You know what they did though, and I think that's why they were put there. And I think the riots were scheduled for those cities.
100%.
They are the ones who let all the rioters out. Those
They
Soros
actually had
DAs,
phone numbers. They had phone numbers on, because I would be at the Christopher Columbus
Yeah,
statue.
and I bet
they
they
had
did-
phone numbers on their shoes and phone numbers on their arm. I actually called the number. And I
So
made
I
a lie
bet-
saying my friend got arrested just because
I
I
would-
wanted to see what really goes on. And it's an actual real law firm. Obviously, they're funded by somebody.
and the
So
DAs,
to me, that's a domestic terrorist.
and the
Soros
DAs
is a
are in the
domestic
pocket
terrorist.
of the law firms.
Absolutely.
Because of Soros. But how about this?
They should all be arrested for
And this
obstruction of
occur-
justice.
the first thing that occurred to me as I was sitting there in campaign headquarters when Trump sent me over there the day after the election is I got 2 or 3 reports in a row. Philadelphia, Detroit, can't remember the third. Could have been Minneapolis. And here the report was essentially the same. Mayor, you got to come here. You got to come here. You know what they did to us starting this morning? I said, no, what did they do to you? I never saw this before, they said. We came here to inspect ballots. We always inspect ballots one next to the other. I had done this before in my life as a young person. I knew exactly what they were talking about. And if people would like to create a mental image of this, think of the 2000 election and the hanging chads, and one person would hold the thing up, right? And then there'd be a Democrat on one side, a Republican on the other, and they would agree or disagree. And the Democrat might object, the Republican might agree. They said, we have not gotten to look at one ballot, and they have us behind fences at least 3 football fields away.
I mean, I told you I went to Philadelphia
So I
to
said-
try to help, and
I said,
they didn't let me anywhere near
I said,
there.
that can't be possible.
Yeah.
They said, no, you got to
wouldn't
come here
think.
and see it. I said, send
Yeah.
me pictures. So they send me pictures from Philadelphia. Then they send me pictures from Detroit. Then they send me pictures from Milwaukee. And I say to myself, this is a conspiracy. This is
It's almost unbelievable.
when they say
if
I'm
if
making
you're
up a
not seeing it.
conspiracy, Jesus, that's what that's what I did all my life in prosecuting the mafia and financial criminals. It just doesn't happen that that morning, the Democratic leader in Philadelphia, the Democratic leader in Detroit, and the Democratic leader all woke up that morning and said, hey, we're going to get fences We're going to stick the
It's unbelievable.
Republicans 1,000 yards away in fences, and we're not going to allow them to see the paper ballots. This has to be an organized effort, and they must have found some common guy who had the fences so they could get a deal on the fences, because they got an awful lot of. They got
those union. They got to give those
fences.
union. They got to give those union contracts to somebody.
They got an
right?
awful lot of fences up there. And then I said, aha, they don't want us to look at the paper ballots. Now, just exactly why don't they want us to look at the paper ballots? Because they're phony.
And only in the middle of the night, all those ballots.
Because they're phony. And the state sent out a official ballot on official paper.
Right?
And these things were made up in the middle of the night. Some of them, it turns out, marked by machines, and they don't want a Republican to even get their hands on one of these.
Or they were putting the same ballots through the machine more than one time.
Yeah, and then
Krasner was going on TV.
Then the next thing you do is look at the cities they did it in, and you realize the full length and breadth of the conspiracy.
Oh yeah, all
crooked
Soros funded
with
cities.
Soros DAs,
Yes.
with judges who are appointed by crooked Democrat leaders.
Just in
People
cities,
think
not
they're
even the rest
judges.
of the state.
They're not judges. They're political appointees of the Democratic leader, like they are in New York. You think the judge sitting in the Trump case is really like a judge appointed by God? No. The judge is appointed by the Democrat county leader. I made a career of putting them in jail. Oh, but I'm sure they're honest now.
And it's horrible for the men and women that actually serve every day. You know, the police officers, the people, detectives that are actually doing their jobs. And you have these DAs, they're just dropping the charges. What is the point?
The judges are much better.
They're horrible too.
The judges, if the DAs don't let them go, the judges let them go. We got a.
When do these people get held accountable? Like there's so much blood
on
their hands. Like, when are they going to be held accountable?
I hope it's before St. Peter, because by that time it'll do some good for eternity, but it won't do any good for us. I hope it happens before then. Well, we're going to try to find a way to have that happen, because if we do get elected in 2024, the new president gets to appoint 92 new United States attorneys. And when I was United States attorney, I have to tell you, I never had more power. We'll exercise it wisely and fairly, but putting them in jail would be like,
oh, I would be so happy.
Be like, oh gosh, it would be like spring training for any decent prosecutor.
Imagine how much relief that would give so many people that lost their loved ones.
I remember once when I was a very young man having this little dream, thinking if I was U.S. attorney in Albany, I could put everybody in jail, Republicans and Democrats. Then I came very close to it when I prosecuted 50 state highway inspectors, about half Republicans, half Democrats. Every single highway inspector was taking bribes. Every single one.
Makes you wonder how many people that's what they found out about. There's so much more that goes on that
the
public just doesn't even know about.
I did that with the FBI when they were honest. And we actually got 49 on bribes, and one turned down the bribe because it wasn't enough money. We went back to him with a little more money, and he took it. Wow. I think the standard bribe was 20 grand. Yeah, I'm not going to do it for 20 grand. So the FBI, FBI gets cheap. And this is when they were honest, but they're still cheap. And they had accorded 20,000 per one. They said, at least he gets away with it. I said, bullshit, gets away with it. Just make it 30,000. And I had to go see Judge Webster to get the 30,000. I got the 30,000. He took it.
The crazy thing to me is they hand pick and choose what it is that they want to prosecute, but they're not prosecuting things as murder, rape, theft.
Well, that's outrageous.
And we wonder, just like the case I told you about when I was robbed in New York, that same person had done the same thing 11 or 12 times already before. Well, no wonder they're going to continue to do it, because there's no recourse for the bad behavior.
If you don't put the career criminal in jail, for every day he's not in jail, he commits a couple crimes.
I get it. They're looking for votes, but geez.
Yeah. Well, the criminals will vote for them. No doubt about it.
Of course.
They got two very, very dedicated constituencies, the criminals and the dead people. Very strong Democrats. So this year we're going to have to keep the criminals from not voting illegally. And we're going to have to inspect and keep very close watch on all those cemeteries.
They don't, you need your ID for everything except for voting. I mean, I don't understand that. I take a flight, I need
Oh, I
my
think the
ID.
dead people have. I think they make up
Oh,
IDs for.
they're doing this.
But if you just keep them in the cemetery, you'll stop it. You're supposed to.
You would
laugh
think
now.
with all the technology that
Hey,
we
Ted,
have, we wouldn't even be
Tell
having
her to
these
laugh.
issues.
It was a joke about the cemeteries.
That was funny.
No, I totally understand what he's saying.
All right. It's going to be hard to sign off for the week, but we are. We're going to sign off for the week. We're going to send you into the weekend. We're going to ask you to watch Uncovering the Truth on Sunday between 10 and 11. We're going to uncover all kinds of truth about our demented president. We're going to surprise you with various things that he can't remember or do, and other things. You can also go to rudygiulianics.com and pick up our podcast, and then send me on rudygiulianics.com. Would you please send me suggestions for improvement? I want to improve. Tell me things that we're not covering that you would like to see covered. All right? Okay. So we'll be back on Monday. The last person to say that was Tucker Carlson, and look what happened to him. So I'm not sure I want to say that. We'll be back. We'll be back. I won't say the time. Thank you. God bless you. Megan, you were
God
terrific
bless.
as usual.
Thank you.
And Ted,
Uh-oh.
Ted is taking pictures. We don't know what he's taking pictures of. And Ted and I will see you on Monday.